This how we gonna get it in. This how we gonna get it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Creative Contact. I'm your host, Kia Orion. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. And we got an episode for you today. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have an episode for you today. If you've read the title already, you know what we're getting into. And so I want to preface this with a few things. This is not going to be politically correct. This will be offensive for many of you. This will probably ruffle some feathers. These are my thoughts and my experiences solely mine and mine alone. As a sovereign individual, I think it's important to live life on your own terms. And as a guy who travels around, wears pretty much the same shit, eats the same shit every day, one meal a day, make beats for a living, like obviously I'm just kind of on my own type of time. And so I want that to be very clear up front, is that this is simply the reason why I like to share these ideas is because one, it helps me organize and kind of work through these different parts and experiences of what it means to be human. And at the same time, I think there's a lot of value in kind of like taking your closet like full of skeletons and opening that up and kind of displaying that publicly, working through those things publicly, because I'll be on like my Eminem 8 Mile shit, where like in that final rap battle where he's like, I am a bum, I do live in a trailer with my mom. Like if I'm open to my own demons, then there's not like leverage of anything for people to like hold over me, and it's not something I have to feel like I have to hide from. And I think we all have these very like kind of like dark places in our mind, in our just part of being human, that a lot of pain that I think we try to hide from. And I don't think pain, any of this kind of like dark energy I don't think it's stuff that you can escape from. I think it's something you can suppress. You can try to suppress it for as long as you want, but I think it spills out eventually, whether you like it or not. You can either face it head on, or it'll find a leak somehow, some way, and it'll leak onto your loved ones or random strangers in the street or your coworkers. Like, there are pieces of us that I think we try to dial in and suppress, and the more you almost try to like stuff it away, the more it kind of like starts to spill out. So this is a medium. I like my music. I use my music often as an outlet for some of these kind of ideas as well. But in this medium, I find like it helps me kind of express them. And I also feel like sometimes these ideas can be valuable as well, because these are some topics that I think some of us might feel but not articulate. And so I like to kind of put it out there and into the ether, and hopefully other people might say, okay, I'm not quite as crazy as I thought, because Kia is a little bit crazy too. So jumping into this is going to be, I've got notes and everything on this one, because this one is going to be a joint, straight up. So where does this all start? This is all taking place, this entire story is taking place over the course of a week, over the course of a couple days. So this started when I went on a date. Let me back up. A cute girl moves into my building. I'm super stoked because we just kicked it on the rooftop. I live up on like, it's like this. It's a room that's like a little bit off of a rooftop, but it's like a communal rooftop space, if you know what I'm saying. Anyways, I was like, yo, who is this? And she was really cute. We just chatted, had a nice chat, felt like there was good chemistry. And I was like, okay, Kia, I'm trying to also live life more I have these 3 words that I've written down that I'm trying to like embody more of. I was like, what would be 3 words that describe myself? And the 3 words are bold, gritty, and kind. And so bold meaning like in the moment when you're going to like, should you kiss the girl or not? Like kiss the girl. Or like, am I going to ruffle feathers? Like ruffle some feathers, be bold. And gritty is more in the terms of like perseverance, like Angela Duckworth grit, that type of like stick with itness, like figure out the fuck outedness, like don't be discouraged type of grit. And then kind, I think, is important because the other 2 have maybe a little more of an edge, but I think just in terms of like trying to keep an open mind towards other people's opinions, or doing, trying to not take things personally, trying to not say things that are offensive, not offensive because this will be offensive, but like personal, I guess, on some 4 agreement shit, not taking things personally, not overreacting, like just trying to be a little bit more mindful of those, what you say, that sort of stuff. So being kind. So I'll say this mantra to myself, like often if there's like a situation, I'll be like, yeah, bold, gritty, kind, right? I try to like embody that. And, every morning I have it written down. I read it with like my list, the goals and gratitude journal shit. I'm like bold, gritty, kind. So anyways, I bump into this girl in the kitchen and I'm like, Kia, ask her out. Like you should go for it. Bold, gritty, kind. And before I can ask her out, she actually asked me out. She's like, hey, we should get coffee sometime. I was like, let's go. So I'll fast forward the story. I'm super stoked because I think she's really cute. She asked me out. I'm starting this invisible script in my mind of like of expectations and assumptions, which coming back to my 4 agreements stuff, that's already mistake number 1 is like starting to assume stuff. And so this will all boil down to, long story short, we go out to dinner. I think we have a great time. And she ends up bouncing. She wanted to like go, she had like another date set up like after me. And so I thought we would like have this really nice evening together. It was going to be something, wasn't. And that's the thing, right? Is expectations. If I had been a better communicator and just said straight up like, hey, so we're just hanging out for an hour and then I'm going to buy you dinner and drinks. Then you're going to go hang out with like another guy that you actually really like. Cool. At least I know straight up. But anyways, I leave that date feeling, I guess, like unsettled, a little bit unsettled. And because I think part of it, again, expectations, assumptions, I was so high on it working out because I was really into her, that I'd felt, that feeling of like dejection kind of, but because, and this is also a side note. This is something that I want to work on. I would love to be able to have the resources. I just realized this yesterday. I can't wait until I have the resources so that anytime I go out with anyone, we don't have to split the bill. And like, it's just my, like, I can't wait until it's my golden rule that like, if we go out, it's like you order whatever you want and I get the bill. Like family, romantic, friendships, like I'm putting it here on tape. That's going to happen someday. It's going to be one of my rules. But I'm not there yet. So if we're going out, I'm still probably going to make you pay for it. I apologize. No, I'm just kidding. We'll split it. But it was one of those things where I was like, man, for how much I paid for that experience going home alone, I was like, man, I could have hired a professional. And like kind of joking. And as soon as that thought entered my mind, it was like it got a hold of me in like a really weird type of way where I was like, why not hire a professional? And I think part of it is because it wasn't even like an option before, because either it was illegal or when I was in Thailand, yes, that was an option, but I was like so focused on my my mission that like that wasn't even like on my radar, which I'm going to come back to in a second. And so because of how things kind of transpired like that, it was never really in the back of my mind. And so I'm like, yo, what would that even entail really? and started going down the rabbit hole of like Reddit forums, like just like seeing what that's, because it's something that's like very much in your face in Asia and also here, but like it's different if you're open to it or not. And before in my life, I'm 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 a little bit extreme, which is something I'll get into a little bit later too. But I'd almost like, I was so dead set on pursuing the dream, pursuing the goal, that like sex was just like off the table. Like relationships were just like off the table for a minute, like for years. And because of that, I think I almost like lost for a while, I almost like lost the ability to interface with women in like a romantic way, in a sexual way. I just kind of became asexual because I was so dead set on like delayed gratification, because I want to achieve this dream. I want to work towards this dream. I don't have time, blah, blah, blah. That I think, I don't know, like there's some, obviously some stuff to unpack there. Some, I should talk to a therapist about that sort of stuff, like why I just kind of like cut that piece out. But I realized that that's not a healthy way to go about stuff, because if you just delay gratification forever, like then what type of a life is that, right? You end up alone and accomplished, but that's, if love is an important thing, and if you want that, then that's obviously not something you can do. So I think after those years of like just rocking solo, that I realized if I'm not ready yet for something that's like, I'm ready for like the one, let's completely settle down, there's a lot of this kind of gray area that you can still have some beautiful experiences with people without it needing to be forever, which I talked about a little bit in the last podcast. And because of that, I think it's like learning to like ride that wave a little bit more between like everything and nothing, which I'm not great at in general. I do kind of live in extremes. I'm a Gemini at heart. I do embody that, and that's a lot of what I'm going to talk about here too, is just kind of how the idea of like abstinence tends to work for me. I'm not even talking about sex, but like alcohol, drugs, like anything like that. Like I have this addictive personality. It's in my blood. Family, friends of family. There's addiction runs in my family. So there's a piece of it that I know that's like, I'm prone to that kind of dark energy. And some people, like my dad, I don't know how he does it. He'll have like a chocolate bar and eat like a piece, and then it'll last for like a week or two. I'm like, who are you, bro? Like, how does that work? If I'm like, I'll have a piece and then I'll have like 6 more pieces, and then I'll just have like another chocolate bar. And then, is there any more chocolate in the house? Because now I'm on a roll, so it's game over. And like that gray, I just like don't do. So I'm just like, I just don't have chocolate in the house because it's just not healthy. And I know that dark energy's there. So I tend not to do things to tempt it, because I know I'm not great at controlling. I'm great at just like not starting. Like, as long as it's not an option, like I'm cool, because I have like my rule set and I can stick to it. But this kind of idea started to, like, I swear to God, man, it's like this dark energy, this dark human animal energy that once it kind of gets you, and I don't know I'm only speaking from my experiences, but once it got me, I was like, it like just started like, it was like impossible to shake. It was like this idea of, it was like kind of tantalizing and thrilling at the same time, because like kind of taboo and whatever. And so I wanted to, just to break it down, because it's Kia, I want to just like think about it more and kind of like just take some of like the moral, the ethical pieces away from it, and just kind of like toy around with the idea. And the older that I get, I think the less I fully believe in anything, which I think sounds a little counterintuitive, because like the older you get, the wiser you're supposed to get, which I do think is true. But the older I get, hopefully wiser I get, the more I actually realize how little I know. So it's like the more I know, it like exposes me to more to like how little I know. And because of that, I'm much less, I hold on to my beliefs much less. I'm much more willing to let things, to be flexible, I guess, in not necessarily my lifestyle, right? I still treat my bedtime like it's a religion. There are certain non-negotiables and boundaries in my life, but in terms of like actual like deep-seated beliefs, I'm more willing to, political beliefs, just the more I kind of like exit the matrix, the more I realize like how deep into the matrix I am. And so I'm just less interested in like arguing with people, trying to convince them that what I believe is the right thing. The less I'm interested in believing like that what I believe is the right thing. Like I'm just more interested in divergent thinking, in kind of antisocial behavior, like just things that are different. I think the older I get, the more attractive these things become to me. Just because I can see the ones and zeros more now, that like that meaning like kind of just, you know, for the Matrix analogy, but like it's true. Like the more I kind of can like kind of see how everything's kind of made up, this kind of like consciousness allows me to just question more and question myself more, question my own beliefs more. And so this is one of them, around something like paying a sex worker and morals and the like political, racial, spiritual pieces that all tie into something like this, especially coming from this as a white guy. And so, speaking of which as well, I'm not even going to pretend like I know everything on this subject, because I don't. But if when I'm buying a Bluetooth speaker, I can't just like go in and like buy a Bluetooth speaker. I'm a guy who's going to like read the Wired magazine. I'm going to read TechCrunch. I'm going to figure out like what are the top recommended Bluetooth speakers for 2021 that's waterproof, that has the best battery life, like reviewed by Wirecutter. Like that's just the type of guy I am. Like I'm a digital nomad for a reason, minimalist. Like I just like to optimize shit. So even if it's going to be something like paying for a sex worker, I'm going to want to optimize it, like, and research it and just like go down the rabbit hole, because that's the type of guy I am. And so I started to toy with these ideas more about like what that would look like for myself. And I think a piece of it isn't even that like I'm like some like super like sex hungry dude. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I went years doing my own thing, so it's not like that's not something that I can't control. But I think it was more this thought of that to be able to like there is a piece of it that's like that's kind of like taboo and kind of like different, and it's a different world that was just like very intriguing and kind of tantalizing in a way that I couldn't seem to shake. And so I just started thinking a lot about morals in general and looking into it and reading articles, listening to podcasts with sex workers, and listening and watching and looking at articles about, different faith-based organizations that are obviously like incredibly against this. And how we have, I think, these religious ideologies sometimes that are I think at the best sometimes help us with like having like a moral compass, like be a good person, like treat your neighbor well, don't sleep with your neighbor's wife, like do your best, like just things that I think are dope. But at the same time, I also think morals are like they're flexible, and I think that they're situational in a way, because like how many wars have been fought for in terms of religion, on a religious belief, a religious ideation. And like, if the point is like that God created all beings, and you're like killing other God's beings, like they probably wouldn't like that, but we were able to justify it to ourselves because it's for a certain cause. And I know that's that's a little bit far reaching, but for one example, I think another one is this idea that we feel like we're very advanced, that we're different than animals. But as soon as like infrastructure goes out, like in New York when there's a blackout or something, like how quickly those barriers break down, and we revert back to like animal behavior very quickly. That I think is interesting, and I'm curious how much of our quote unquote morality is less this inherent like want to like do good, and how much of it is more just based out of fear, that if we like, it's like we're held together by like this cultural glue that's like, we will rob, steal, pillage if we're allowed to. But because we're afraid of like that antisocial behavior and being cast out of the in-group, like how much of that kind of like inherent fear is actually what keeps us like kind of on the straight and narrow, rather than how much of us actually like there. I think as animals, there is this real kind of like deep-seated pieces of us that like pieces of with violence and sex, and that are like very raw, that we have kind of this nice like guise to put over those things, like, and present to other people. But that like, I think a lot of us do have that kind of like, still, I don't want to call it dark energy, because it's like it's kind of like that, but it's more like that raw animal energy, I think, is more like a better way to put it. That as much as we like to pretend to, we aren't, as much as we like to pretend we aren't animals, we're still animals. And I actually found this dope quote. It's actually not a quote. It's a, what is it? It's a, I don't even know the phrase for it, but it's like a piece in the Bible by this dude. I think it's Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes. And it's Ecclesiastes 3:18. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing the name right. But it says, "As for humans, God tests them so that they may see that they are like animals. Surely the fate of human beings is like that of animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so does the other. All have the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. Everything is meaningless. All go to the same place. All come from dust, and to dust we all return." And I was like, whoa, that's a bar. All come from dust, and to dust we shall return. I was like, that's gangster. And I think that that's so true, that like we feel like we're in a different reality and we're somehow special, but there is this animal piece to us that is, that I do think we are unique in some ways as humans. Obviously, a lot of ways. This is like very broad over like our brains, blah blah blah. But I mean more like in the sense of like we're I think through history it's proved we're capable of brutal acts of violence, and at the same time incredible acts of nobility. And that's where I think like the moral piece of this is really becomes gray very fast. That because it's how you, that it's not necessarily like always just how you act. It's like very situational. If like someone comes into your house and tries to rob you or something, and you kill the like you're still a murderer, but you did it because you're protecting your family. Or again, like I made the religious wars that I was talking about before, like you're fighting for what you believe in, true, but you're still like you're doing incredible damage to other people and other cultures. And so it's just like it's an interesting piece of at the same time like thinking about how just in our history too, incredible acts of nobility and generosity that I do think does make us like just a really interesting animal that I don't see a lot in other animals, is that kind of like reciprocal piece, which I also think boils down to, again, why it's important for us to be kind of a cultural animal. Like we're a community-based animal. I think that's otherwise I think that gene would have left us, and it would have just been like more like Spartan type shit. Like the biggest, baddest dude is like the top one, which obviously doesn't work here. Like we have that gene for a reason. It makes us feel good to do good stuff for other people for a reason. Like that's because that helps keep us alive. Like you go off on your own in your own little pod, like the jaguar is probably going to eat your ass compared to being like you help out, blah, 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 community stuff. Period. So that's just one piece. I know this is like, you're like, Kia, what is going on? But these are just things, these are ideas that I've been just toying with kind of this last week that I feel that I wanted to share, and that just kind of like to walk you through my thought process. Also, these I think are these thoughts kind of help me also kind of like figure out where I stand on these issues as well. Just because I have a lot going on up here, and it kind of helps me like just piece these things out. So, anyways, to continue the story, things are always better and worse in your imagination. And so this thought was kind of gripping me and like not letting me go of, and I it's like hard to explain, but again, this entire thing can be wrapped up in like yin and yang of it being like two sides of the same coin as humans, as animals. Like that's the theme of this entire pod, I think, is it's like this yin and yang of I'm very like I have two legal last names for a reason. My mom didn't take my dad's name for a reason. I was aware of like my parents like splitting chores, my dad cooking and my mom making more money, or vice versa. Like they were always, I was brought up with two rock star hippie parents who always made it very aware of kind of like these are kind of like societal norms around like women and men, but this is the way that we view things because we're equal and we do things differently. And so it's really interesting. It was interesting kind of battling that side of my brain. It's like a little bit more analytical, more in touch with my feminine, more sensitive, empathetic, and the way that I view women in general. And then also this very real kind of animalistic, like deep-seated, like that one that's a little bit more masculine, that kind of like that wants power and status, control, sex, like all those kinds of things. That is very, I can be almost like on some meditation shit. Like I can be aware of it and I can almost like pull it up and like look at it from an objective lens, but it's not something that I can necessarily just like in meditation, like they tell you like bring your thoughts up to the center and be like, okay, I'm thinking about this, and let it go. And it's something that's so, I think, deep rooted in me as a man, because I don't know what it's like as a woman's experience, that like I could pull it up, but like I still couldn't just like, I don't know what it was. I couldn't shake that like that thirst in a way. So that like need for sexual fulfillment, I guess, is a better way to put it. even having all of this kind of like awareness around femininity and shit like that, which I think is just fascinating in and of itself. So, like I said before, I think everything is worse in your imagination, or better in your imagination, than it is in real life. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to call two friends. There were two friends in particular that I thought would have an interesting take on this. I'm not going to mention y'all by name, but y'all know who you are. One was a woman, one was a man. And the woman, she's a rock star. She's very spiritual. She's like into tantra, and like energies and shit like that, which I'm into too. Not quite that heavy. She's on like the next level of it. I'm like still like a Padawan mode, but I was like, I think but she's also very strong, like about feminine energy and empowerment, etc. And so I called her up and was like, hey, this is what it is. Told her a little bit of the backstory. I said, I'm kind of dabbling with these like ideas and maybe like pulling the trigger on some stuff like this. What's your take? And she had some really cool, she dropped some gems on me about like just ideas about like what it is, what kind of need would you be trying to fill doing something like that. And we talked about the benefits and detriments, but like how having just a simply transactional sexual relationship could be kind of cool in a way that it's clean, right? I think money and transactions in general money makes transactions clean because you're paying for a service, which I think can be really helpful. At the same time, and something that she reiterated too was, and that she was kind of talking to me about, was the idea behind, like, do you feel like this is, as a man, it's almost like part, like if you're really embracing like your masculine energy and like doing your job as a man, then you're supporting a woman and giving a woman like you're giving her a space to thrive. And so that really stuck with me because I was like, like, I do think that, like, how many of your friends, throw it out there, how many of your friends have you slept with and then changed the relationship? And I think that sex, it can be casual, and I've had some really great partners that it's casual, but you kind of have this like agreement. I think communication, again, with this is really clear, but it can still get kind of tricky. And that's where something I feel like having a more transactional nature could be beneficial. And also because in that regard as well, when we were talking about it, another gem she dropped on me was to try to go more into interactions with women, like dates in particular, with like no expectations. To just come in and be like, whatever this is, like, that was great. And I think that's where, like, the other night that I was talking about, if I just come in and being like, whatever happens, and that's enough, it would have been great. I think it was because I had these other expectations predominantly around sex and how I expected the night to go, that it ended up, that's the part that ended up just kind of like being. And I think women, I assume probably women experience that too. They're like, just because I'm going out with you, I'm not going to give you any action. Like, I'm just trying to get to know you. And as women, again, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'd assume too, it probably is strange as a woman. Talked to friends before about the whole payment thing. It's like, just because you're paying for dinner or you're paying for shit, like, doesn't mean I'm giving you any action. And that's a pressure, I think, that I'd assume, again, I'm breaking my own four agreements rule here of assuming that like women feel that pressure too, of being like, I'm like, unless I explicitly state like, let's go make some action happen, like, I don't owe you shit. And I think for me, what would be nice about the transactional piece is almost like to have that kind of like need taken care of, that then I feel like it might free up. It might just be easier to not have like some of those like more sexual expectations when interfacing on dates with women. And so it's an interesting thing. But anyways, she was like, Kia, she's like, just think of, she talked to me about the energies of it and how like sex, it's like this interchanging of energies and stuff like that. And is that sort of an interaction? Would that be depleting you or lifting you up? Just cool. And I think for me, sex can be simply that's just purely physical, but it's also there's a lot that is also kind of tied into it that makes it like an experience. When I look back on my best experiences, there are other pieces at play. But I'm going to put a pin in that because we're going to get to that later. So I called her. That was cool. And then I called my buddy, who I knew would have a different opinion. And I knew he'd keep it straight with me. And he'd be like, Kia, he'd be like, Kia, you're tripping. Or he'd be like, I knew he would drop some sage advice on me because that's just what he'd do. And so I called him up and we chatted about it, and he dropped some really cool gems on me. And this, I was thinking about it, and pretty much what he said was, Kia, he's like, there's nothing I'm going to tell you I'm not going to tell you that you should or you shouldn't. But he's like, he questioned me and he said, how much of this, of if you want to follow through on this, are you letting other people, what you think other people would think about you, dictate your action? And I think that is a driving factor for so many of us, that we're so tethered to other people's opinions that we lead unspoken. Like we lead a lot of our life tethered to what we simply think other people's opinions will be about us, rather than actually doing things for ourselves and figuring out how we feel about things for ourselves. And so for me, the same way that like I said before, things are better or worse in your imagination. I'm a guy got to try shit. Whether it's like a location that everybody raves about, and I go and I'm like, I don't love this place, compared to also being open to just like the gems that you stumble on that you're like, wow, this is amazing. Everything will always be, whether it's a fear, it'll always be worse in your head. And I sometimes think of it's like rosy retrospection. Sometimes you think about stuff and it's always better in your head. So after he said that, I was like, that's a really good point. I was like, I need to just go try this shit. I was like, let me just go the same way I treat everything else in my life. You got to experiment. You got to go taste it for yourself. And I was like, I don't have to commit to anything, but let me just go catch a vibe. Let me go feel it out. And like I said, I already knew the spot where all this goes down, because actually a plaza that serves great tacos. Like if you are curious and coming to Mexico City, like let me know. This plaza has amazing tacos. Not even joking. It's like this. It's food from Jalisco. The birria is super rich. It's amazing. So I like this. This was actually my spot. There's a dope ice cream spot nearby. So like, let me know. This was my plaza. Like I already knew it, but because I was so in my Kia, like on my tacos, ice cream shit. I saw ladies before, but it just wasn't even on the radar. But I was like, let me actually go catch a vibe. And the thing is, when you go there, speaking of everything being in your mind, I realized how much of, for at least in my experience with these women, it's almost like you show up to like the DMV in New York, where like you come into the DMV, and if you've ever been to the DMV in New York, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it also could be like, I don't know, like a real estate office or something. You come in, cute girl behind the desk, she's going to be on her phone, like scrolling through TikTok or something, and you come up and you're like, oh, hey, like, I'm here to like renew my license. And she'll be like, yeah, it's the third door on the left. And you'd be like, okay, great, thanks. And then you go, and it was almost like that same thing where like they're just like on their phone, just like hanging out, and you can come up and you chat with them for a second, and they'll be like, this is how much I am, this is how much the hotel is. And it's just like they're at work, they're working. It's like it's very cut and dry. And I remember too, when I lived across from a brothel when I was in Thailand for a year and change. And I remember I would come home at night and there'd be all these cute girls like outside this brothel. But it was never even really tempting for me. And it's because in that moment too, again, when I went to the plaza, it's like it all clicked into place for me. That it's less, and this is where like the energy shit comes into play, is it's less for me about simply the act. The act of sex itself is so different. And really what I think the thrill comes from, the excitement for myself in these moments that I really dial in and realize is I think it's the thrill of being desired. The thrill of it's filling that need of feeling wanted, feeling worthy. I'm not sure how anybody would think that I'm desirable with a mustache like this, but I'm making it work the best of my ability. So shout out to y'all. But I think that it was like a switch went off where like the vibe was just so not what I wanted that it just like clicked into place again in your mind. And I think in my mind, what's so appealing about something like that, like paying a sex worker, is yes, the experience, the actual physical experience. But I realized, I said, okay, so if that ain't it, like what would an ideal experience with a sex worker look like? When I played it out in my mind, it would be like playful, and she'd be independent. It wouldn't be like, there wouldn't be any like weird fucked up stuff going on and like her being forced in. It would be like I said, I go down the rabbit hole. When I go down the rabbit hole, your boy go down the rabbit hole. So I was like listening to interviews with sex workers and stuff who sounded super rad. And I think that's a part of it, is like, it would be with a freelancer, or I guess she'd be a business owner because she's doing her thing, who it would be by choice. She wouldn't be forced into it. And it'd be something that'd be like fun and playful and lighthearted. And I think that speaking of being a sovereign individual, I think that is the piece for me that kind of clicked into place. Was it's less about the actual morality, whatever, of paying for a sex worker, and it's all the other shit that comes with it, that all the other power dynamics that come with it, that those are the pieces that like, that it's not that act of sex itself that I want necessarily. It's like that genuine connection that also has that sexual component to it. And also in that moment, realizing that if that's what I want, that like, why not, that maybe on surface level, it feels like I want just the sex piece, but that in reality, what I'm craving is something more substantial. And maybe that was just a kickback from maybe that feeling of rejection or unworthiness from that night, that like that was like kind of like the tipping point of like some of those feelings that when it was like the option was there, it was like in front of me, you could pull the trigger and go, that wasn't what I wanted. And so, but in order to get to that, in order to have those realizations, you have to almost get to that point and like test the idea out. And I think that was like the big takeaway too, is that like peeling back pieces of morality or ethics around some of these ideas and trying shit for yourself that is really important. That's also something I'm trying to embrace more, is like, you hear a lot of stuff about, or this is what mom and dad think about, or this is what your brother thinks about, or your friend, whatever, and just being like, how do I feel about it? What's my experience with this? And so it was a couple days, but it was like of like this thing that like seriously it's hard to explain, but it's like this dark grip. And I think that is the power of sex just in general as animals, is it's like this deep-seated grip on you. And that night I went home alone and I felt like it just like let me go. It was like as soon as I kind of like clicked into place of making the decision of being like, this is not what I want. It's an option, but this is not what I want. I slept like a baby. It was like, it had let me go. I was like, I had the freedom to just be Kia again. And, yeah, from dust we came and from dust we shall return. So that was my first experience with a sex worker. I realize that might have been a little bit of a clickbaity title, but if you're here, you're here. I appreciate you rocking with the boy as always. No music takeaways in this one, no business shit, just kind of Kia's thoughts on morality and sex work, in all that sort of stuff, at least in this point of my life. And again, I reserve the right to change any of these ideas. At any point, I can agree with myself or disagree with myself, and who knows what future Kia wants? Who knows what future Kia is gonna do? But life is one experiment, one big experiment, and I think this is just another piece to the puzzle of kind of figuring out, what I feel, and what I want, and who I am, and everything in between. So this is me kind of dragging the skeletons out of the closet. This is a little bit therapy sesh, a little bit of a sexy sesh. Sorry, because I know this is probably a little bit explicit. Sorry to all my family if you were listening to this, but yeah, if you agree, disagree, feel free to hit me up and flame me and let me know how ignorant I am or naive I am. But that's part of the game. You live and you learn. Thanks for tuning in. As always, I'll check you on the next one. Peace.